A hand grips the pistol tight. This isn't a drill. The guys across from him open fire. They aren't holding back. Bullets tear through the air, narrowly missing the target in white armor. Luca doesn't flinch. Behind that glowing red visor, his eyes are tracking every shot. A single round zips through the smoke. It's the only one that needs to land. Blood sprays as the trainees take hits. The simulation just got real. One of them catches a round right between the eyes. Down for the count. The protagonist stands over the mess, his own gun still smoking. Mission accomplished. Slow clapping echoes through the chamber. Someone liked the show. Luca holsters his weapon and walks toward the shadows. Time for the debrief. Back in the day, Earth was actually high-tech. But technology doesn't always equal hope. Resource wars turned the planet into a graveyard. Humanity was tearing itself apart. They kept looking for new homes in the stars, but they weren't alone out there. An unknown alien species finished what the war started. Earth was gone. The survivors drifted through the void for ages before finally finding a new rock to call home. They called it Novice. It was supposed to be a fresh start, but old habits die hard. 3 factions rose from the ashes. First, the Bellado Federation, a melting pot of humans and aliens. Then there's the Akrisha Empire, where the soldiers are more machine than men. Efficiency is everything. Finally, the Holy Korite Alliance. They trade in force energy and sheer willpower. Now, they're all fighting over the same scrap of dirt. Some things never change. The resource war is back on, and this time, there's no Earth to go back to. The Imperial soldier stands ready. For him, the war isn't just about survival, it's his job. Emilis Custoria looks on with a grim smile. He tells the next trainee to step up. The commander of the Imperial Guard isn't known for his mercy. If you're weak, you're dead. Luca stares back, completely unfazed. He's been through worse than this simulation. They exchange a look. Emilis wants to see if this kid is really the talent everyone says he is. The boy suits up. He checks his gear with the precision of a veteran. No room for error. The helmet locks into place. The red glow returns. He's not a person anymore. He's a tool. Across the room, 5 death row inmates are waiting. They were promised their lives if they win. They look desperate, hungry, and ready to kill. They think they got a chance. Luca draws his blade. He doesn't even bother with the gun yet. The inmates charge all at once, screaming. They're betting everything on this one push. The trainee kicks off the floor, vanishing into a blur of motion. Speed is his greatest weapon. He whispers that this will only take 10 seconds. He's being generous. A shot rings out, but the armored figure is already somewhere else. He's way ahead of them. Blood splatters as the first man falls. He didn't even see the strike coming. The others freeze. The realization starts to sink in. They're trapped in here with a monster. He weaves between them, moving like a ghost through a hailstorm of lead. Data streams across his HUD. He sees their trajectories before they even pull the trigger. The next few seconds are just a symphony of violence. He's taking them apart one by one. In the center of the carnage, the soldier stands victorious. The inmates never had shot. The last survivor stares at the barrel of a gun. Sweat and blood drip onto the floor. It's over. Luca is pushing his limits. He needs to sharpen his senses if he wants to survive this mess. His eyes are wide, tracking every micro-movement in the room. He's going beyond human reaction speeds. A bullet spins through the air in slow motion. To anyone else, it's a blur. To him, it's a target. He weaves through the fire like a ghost, calculating the trajectory of every shot before it's even fired. Commander Hemilis Custoria watches the slaughter with a twisted grin. He loves seeing this kind of talent. The symbol of the Akrisha Empire looms over the arena, a cold reminder of who owns these kids. The trainee closes the gap in a heartbeat. He isn't just dodging anymore. He's finishing this. He stands among the fallen, his blade dripping. 5 inmates, and he didn't break a sweat. Blood drips from the boy's nose. He's breathing hard, but his gaze hasn't softened. He walks toward his commander, the weight of the simulation still hanging over him. Emilis mentions the elite technique he just witnessed. Trajectory control isn't supposed to be for orphans. The kid just shrugs. He stole the move from the guy who went before him. Pure instinct. Luca looks up, waiting for whatever comes next. In this empire, a reward is usually painful. The commander's hand shoots out. He's done talking. The other trainees watch in horror. They know what's about to happen, and they can't look away. Emilis has a gift for the boy, a way to make that talent of his permanent. He drives his fingers into the kid's eye with zero hesitation. The sound is sickening. Luca just stands there, blood pouring down his face. He doesn't scream. He just stares back with the eye he has left. Later, the orphan sits alone in his dark dorm room, wearing a fresh patch over the socket. A voice breaks the silence. Ili Karthika, trainee number 12, decides to pay a visit. The one-eyed soldier tracks the newcomer. He's not in a mood for guests. Aili makes himself comfortable on the edge of the bed. He's got that noble air that usually means trouble. The blonde is all smiles, acting like they're old buddies after that show in the arena. He admits he was impressed. It's rare to see someone with that kind of raw potential. The guest laughs, saying it'll be hard to actually become friends with someone as intense as him. The protagonist doesn't bite. He's been a tool for the military too long to care about friendship. Aili holds out his cybernetic hand, offering something small and glowing. It's a sedative to dull the pain. He says it'll help the boy rest better after the surgery. Luca refuses. He doesn't trust anything that comes from a noble, especially if it's free. The noble warns him that mental toughness has its limits. You can't train if you can't sleep. The orphan points out that Aili has his own edge, that specialized mechanical eye of his. The visitor shows it off. It's built for calculating trajectories, but it's still just a machine. Aili admits that Luca's instinct is far more terrifying than any tech. That's why he's here. They lock eyes. One real, one fake, both looking for a way out of this hellhole. Outside, the city is a sprawl of shadows and wires. Life here is cheap, and everyone knows it. Aili's expression shifts. The friendly mask is slipping, revealing something much colder. He talks about how easy it is for people at the top to manipulate the results of their fair system. He's offering more than just a sedative. He's offering partnership, information from muscle. The teen listens, weighing his options. He knows better than anyone that you can't survive alone. Aili extends his hand again. This time, it's not for a pill. It's a deal. The soldier looks at the hand, then up at the smiling noble. He knows he's making a deal with the devil. They shake on it. A temporary alliance in a world that wants them both dead. Lucas stares into the darkness, his new cybernetic eye glowing with a predatory red light. The gift from the commander is now part of him. Aili Karthika watches him from the shadows, his blue eyes reflecting a somber realization of the path they've chosen. This story isn't a tale of glory. It's a record of what it takes to endure when everything is taken from you. It's a journey born from the ashes of a world that was torn apart by its own ambition and steel. The narrative follows the cold, calculated transformation of a boy being raised as a living military weapon. A weapon forged in the heart of Akrisha, a tyrannical empire that demands absolute obedience. Training is relentless. Luca and Aili spend every waking hour at the range, perfecting their lethality under the watchful eyes of their superiors. They are constantly monitored, every shot and every heartbeat analyzed to ensure they become the perfect tools. The orphan has adapted well, moving through combat simulations with a speed and precision that borders on the inhuman. His red eye whirs, its internal interface locking onto targets and predicting their every move with terrifying accuracy. He fires with lethal intent. In the Akrisha Empire, there is no room for hesitation, only the cold, hard logic of the mission. Luca stands by the terminal, checking the data after his combat simulation. On the other side of the glass, the training dummy's head is riddled with a perfect cluster of shots. Aili Karthika pops up behind him, acting surprised that Luca managed to nail every single headshot. He flashes a smug grin, claiming the top student really is built different. Luca doesn't even look at him, keeping his expression stone cold. Aili just laughs it off, saying guns happen to be his specialty too. The noble trainee warns that if he keeps being this nonchalant, he'll eventually get overtaken. Luca finally glances back, his gaze completely indifferent to the challenge. Aili flexes his mechanical left hand, his eyes tracking Luca's every move. The protagonist watches him back, sensing a sharp edge behind that polite front. They stand in the dim light of the facility, the atmosphere between them turning tense. A thin, sinister smile pulls at the corner of Aili's mouth. He tells Luca he's already well aware that he's a good person. Luca ignores the comment and turns back to his weapon, checking the magazine. Heavy transport trucks kick up dust as they roll across the barren terrain. Commander Himila's Castoria addresses the unit, announcing that Luca and Aili will lead the platoons. The commander makes it clear, if anyone has a problem with his choice, they can get out. The two trainees sit among the others in the dark transport, gear locked and ready. They arrive at the edge of a deep gorge overlooking a cluster of buildings. Himila's delivers the final order. No prisoners, just total elimination. Heavy boots hit the ground as the raid officially begins. Aili glances over, asking Luca if he's feeling nervous about his first real mission. Below them, the small village sits quietly in a valley, unaware of the threat. Luca stares down at the target, his mind focusing on the mission objective. He looks back as a massive suit of black power armor looms over the cliffside. The armored giant glows with an ominous red light as it steps forward. Its horned helmet reflects the dying light of the sunset. Luca and Ailey wait for the final signal before they descend into the valley. Ailey narrows his eyes, focusing on the tactical readout on his visor. He recalls the Imperial doctrine: even women and children are just targets in the field. The raid is a massacre. Luca stands tall amidst the smoke and burning ruins. A bright spotlight cuts through the ash as another building goes up in flames. Luca walks through the carnage, his blade still drawn. The red glow of his visor flickers as he scans for any remaining life signs. He stops dead in his tracks when he spots someone huddled in the shadows. It's a small boy, shaking and crying out for his mother. Luca stares at the child, the weight of his orders clashing with the sight before him. The Koran child huddles closer to the ground, terrified of the black-clad soldier. Tears stream down his face as he hides behind his hands, trembling. He looks up with a pleading, desperate expression, completely broken. The commander's order to kill everyone repeats in Luca's head. Luca's cybernetic eye glows a fierce red as he forces himself not to hesitate. Luca stands atop the ridge, his silhouette looming over the burning valley. Below him, the Koran child is curled into a ball, sobbing as the world around him falls apart. He reaches out his armored hand toward the boy, the village fire reflecting in his visor. A red warning icon flashes in his vision as he struggles with the order to kill everyone. The kid cowers behind the only rock left standing in the ruins of his home. A sudden explosion rocks the ground right next to him, sending dirt and debris flying. Luca looks up sharply, caught off guard by the blast. He spots Ailey Karthika standing a few meters away, watching the scene unfold. Panic hits him when he realizes Ailey has seen his hesitation, and he wonders how long he's been standing there. Ailey just looks back with a faint, unsettling smirk on his face. The protagonist narrows his eyes, feeling the dangerous weight of being caught in an act of mercy. He knows if any of the other trainees found out he spared a target, his life would be over. Before he can react, a brilliant blue light erupts from a tower in the distance. The top of the tower blows apart, raining fire and stone down on the squad. Luca shouts out to Ailey, warning him of the incoming attack. Through the thick smoke, a figure in a tattered gray cloak appears on a ridge. It /U2019's a Koran rebel, and he /U2019's screaming for the accretions to go straight to hell. Luca stares at the man, realizing he /U2019's the one triggering the massive blasts. The two face each other in the middle of the scorched settlement. The rebel lunges with terrifying speed, his eyes glowing with an intense blue light. He thrusts out his palm, and another surge of raw energy erupts toward the squad. The ground shatters as the force of the blast slams into the trainees. Luca grits his teeth, realizing they /U2019 run straight into a powerful force user. The rebel shouts that this wasn't /U2019 a military base /U2014, it /U2019's a civilian settlement they're destroying. The trainees try to regroup, but the rebel is relentless in his assault. Luca pushes his cybernetic eye to the limit, timing his movements to avoid the explosions. The man charges again, his face twisted in a mask of pure, righteous fury. The teen feels the pressure building, his breath coming in short bursts inside his helmet. A ball of crackling blue energy forms in the rebel's hand. It detonates in a blinding flash, sending shockwaves through the surrounding ruins. Luca leaps through the flames, his sword drawn and ready to strike. The Koran rebel barks a challenge, his palms sparking with more concentrated power. Ailey is sent flying back into the rubble, his armor shattered and his body limp. Luca /U2019's mind goes dark as he realizes his moment of hesitation has led to this disaster. He resolves to do whatever it takes to fix the mistake he made. The rebel unleashes a barrage of light, but Luca charges straight through it. The man drops down from the ruins, his hand glowing with lethal energy. Luca /U2019's expression turns to stone as he focuses everything on his opponent. A massive surge of blue force swirls around the rebel's fingers. Luca lunges forward, his blade cutting through the air and the energy alike. The red light of his visor gleams as he closes in for the finishing blow. The blue energy of the rebel's power reflects off his helmet as they finally collide. The Koran rebel is caught in the middle of his attack, his blue eyes widening as the lethal strike lands. The force of the collision shatters Luca's helmet, pieces of the black armor falling away to reveal his young, soot-streaked face. His eye remains fixed on his opponent, reflecting the intense blue glow and the red haze of the battlefield. Blood spills from the rebel's lips as his expression shifts from rage to a heartbreaking sorrow, realizing he's been fighting a child. With a sharp, metallic sound, the duel is brought to a violent and final end. Luca stands over the fallen man, his messy brown hair matted with sweat and dust as he stares down at his hands. The rebel's body goes limp, a dark shape disappearing into the crimson smoke of the burning settlement. Silence briefly falls over the clearing, broken only by the crackle of flames devouring the remains of the village. The remains of the trainee's helmet lie in the dirt, a symbol of the protection he just lost. He pants heavily, his face contorted with the mounting guilt and exhaustion of the massacre. A voice from his training rings in his head, a cold order to move and never let emotions interfere with a mission. He repeats the mantra to himself. Everything he does is for the strength and expansion of the Empire. Standing over the lifeless legs of his foe, he feels the last of his hesitation being crushed. Luca's right eye glows with a cold, cybernetic red light as he buries his feelings deep inside. He turns and walks back into the inferno, ignoring the desperate pleas for help echoing from the burning buildings. He is a tool of the state now, driven by the mission and nothing else. Back at Imperial headquarters, the recovery room is filled with medical pods for the wounded. Luca floats in a sterile fluid, staring blankly as a voice asks him how it feels to almost die. He doesn't miss a beat, telling Ali to speak for himself since he's the one who is truly on the brink. In the next pod over, Ali just lets out a dry laugh. Ali isn't even bothered. He explains his back was a mess, so he got a whole new titanium spine and artificial skin. He looks over, his gaze sharp and strangely calm. Lucas sinks back into the water, his mind drifting away from the conversation. Images of a massive black night and a crumbling tower flash through his head. He stares up at the ceiling, the silence of the room weighing heavy. He remembers the Corn rebels' final moments. The guy was dying and still had the nerve to be shocked that his killer was just a kid. Luca knows the truth. He's already a soldier, and sparing him was a mistake that cost that man everything. His jaw tightens as his red eye glows, the guilt buried under a layer of cold resolve. Ailey breaks the silence, asking why Luca bothered to close the Korean girl's eyes. He looks at Luca with genuine curiosity, trying to find a trace of sentiment in his partner. Luca just turns away, telling Ailey he talks too much and wondering if they gave him a mechanical tongue too. He stares at the wall, his face unreadable as the machines hum around them. Time skips ahead 2 years, and the Centurion of the 1st century is addressing a new batch of recruits. Luca and Ailey stand at the front of the formation, now seasoned cadets and models for the younger ones to follow. The mustachioed Centurion lays it out. Their job is to lead by example and prove their worth to the Empire. Both boys snap a salute, their voices sharp as they answer in unison. Luca's stats are off the charts, sitting at the top of the leaderboard with a massive winning streak. The Centurion dismisses them to continue their training, and Ailey's heavy cybernetic arm gleams in the harsh lights. Luca watches him go, his expression focused and hungry. He knows this is his chance. If he keeps this up, he can finally make it big and leave the dirt behind. They step onto the sparring platform, the air crackling with energy as they prepare to clash. Ailey lunges forward, his mechanical fist ready to end Luca's undefeated run. Luca ducks under the massive swing, his movements perfectly calculated. He flows through a series of dodges and counters, staying one step ahead of Ailey's brute force. He's fully locked in, his eyes tracking every shift in Ailey's weight. His foot slides into position, but Ailey isn't done yet. The blonde cadet charges in for a follow-up, desperate to break through Luca's defense. But Luca is already gone, and Ailey realizes too late that he's missed his mark. Luca delivers a sharp strike that catches Ailey completely off guard. The impact sends a shock through Ailey, his face contorting as he realizes he's lost again. That makes 124 wins in a row for Luca. Later that night, they sit on a high ledge overlooking the lava-filled landscape, and Ailey admits he really thought he had him this time. Luca points out that new parts don't mean anything without the training to back them up. Ailey leans back, telling Luca he should relax a bit since his birth status doesn't matter anymore in a place like this. Luca's eye narrows, the word birth striking a chord he tries to keep buried. He asks if Ailey honestly believes the world is that simple. Ailey shifts the subject, confessing his real dream was to be a scholar and study the ancient arcane civilization. He knows it's impossible, though. The Empire bans it, and his noble family would never let him be anything but a general. Luca looks back, warning Ailey that his words could be seen as treason against the Empire. Ailey just brushes it off, reminding him that he's only sharing a secret with a friend. He looks away, the conversation turning back to the harsh reality of their service. Luca makes his stance clear. Regardless of friendship, his priority is finishing the mission and the kill. His gaze turns cold as his cybernetic eye flares red, stating his absolute loyalty to the empire that recognized his talent. Ailey watches him, seeing a soldier who has fully embraced his role as a weapon. A small, cynical smirk plays on Luca's lips. Without another word, Ailey drops off the ledge, heading back into the shadows of the facility. He walks away with a casual grace, his cybernetic hand glinting in the moonlight. He glances back one last time with a playful smile, seemingly unfazed by Luca's coldness. Luca stands alone, the weight of the world back on his shoulders. A final warning hangs in the air. That kind of reckless honesty is a death sentence in guard. The scene shifts to an uninhabited neutral zone, where ancient monoliths tower over a dense forest. A mechanical hand reaches out, touching the cold, etched surface of the stone. Claude Ramonis, a fellow trainee, notes that these structures are still putting out an energy response after millions of years. He looks up in awe, his eyes reflecting the strange, ancient power humming within the site. The squad gathers at the base of the ruins, a group of young soldiers in training. Luca remains on edge, a bead of sweat rolling down his face as he scans the area. Claude takes the lead, reminding everyone that this reconnaissance mission is still part of their official training. Luca stays silent, his eyes fixed on the surrounding woods while Claude keeps up the chatter. He considers the records of the past, thinking about how history might actually help them predict what's coming. Claude smiles, happy to find someone who doesn't think his interest in the old world is a waste of time. Luca knows Claude comes from a respected family, even if they aren't as powerful as the Karthikas. As they move deeper into the site, Claude asks if he can get personal for a second. Luca cuts him off, reminding him that he's just an orphan from the slums, but Claude just laughs it off. Ailey joins in, teasing Luca about how popular he's becoming with the other recruits. Suddenly, Luca's HUD flickers to life, his eye beginning to track a movement in the trees. He freezes, his focus narrowing as his sensors pick up a strange signature. The trainees take cover behind the thick trunks, their red visors glowing in the dim light. A heavy silence falls over the forest as they wait for the support team to move into position. Deep in the clearing, a silhouette stands motionless near a glowing structure. A floating cube pulses with a bright, ethereal light, suspended between the ancient pillars. One of the armored trainees stares ahead, his breathing heavy inside his helmet. Luca's eye widens in pure shock as the data starts coming in. Standing in the center of the ruins is a Korite paladin, clad in gleaming silver armor. The paladin's visor glows with a cold, blue light as it turns its head toward the intruders. The trainees realize they aren't alone, the realization hitting them like a physical blow. In a blur of motion, the paladin lunges forward, its energy spear crackling with power. Luca screams at the top of his lungs, telling everyone to run for their lives. But the paladin is already on them, its weapon leveled directly at Claude. A massive explosion of light erupts as the spear finds its mark. The force of the strike is absolute, tearing through the air with a terrifying screech. Blood sprays as the spear tears through armor and flesh, Claude's body thrown back by the sheer momentum of the blow. Luca's face is a mask of pure shock, his breath hitching as he stares at the spot where his teammate just stood. The Korite paladin looms over the battlefield, its silver armor gleaming under a shroud of ethereal blue energy. The energy spear hums with power where it struck, the ancient monolith cracked by the devastating force of the paladin's attack. An energy spear rips through the air, glowing with a deadly blue light. Luca tracks the projectile's path, his eyes struggling to keep up with the speed. The Korite paladin raises a hand, gathering more energy for its next move. It pulls a long spear of pure energy from thin air, ready to strike again. Luca gets knocked flat on his back, his armor sparking from the shock. Just seconds ago, Claude Ramonis was smiling and cracking jokes, completely unaware of what was coming. Now, Luca is left hyperventilating, his mind struggling to process the sudden carnage. He stares down at what's left of his friend, the brutal reality of the mission finally sinking in. Luca tries to force his cybernetic eye to focus, begging the tech to give him a reading on the enemy. But the system is failing him, and his vision is flooded with nothing but red error messages. Through the digital static, the paladin looms over the clearing like some mechanical nightmare. One of the other trainees opens fire, the muzzle flash momentarily cutting through the dark. It doesn't do much. The bullets just shatter against the paladin's glowing energy shield. The rest of the squad rushes in, someone screaming for Luca to get his head back in the game. They all level their weapons at the monster, desperately trying to buy Luca some time. Luca grinds his teeth, forcing the fear down so he can actually move. He takes a sharp breath and tries to steady his shaking hands. He readies his blade as a countdown kicks in on his HUD. He just needs to survive until the heavy hitters get here. He knows the Imperial Guard is watching from the shadows, and their only hope is to hold out for just a few more seconds. The Paladin is already locking on again, and the timer is barely at a second. The creature tosses another energy spear with terrifying precision. It screams through the air, aimed right for Luca's head. He manages to block it, but the force of the hit feels like it's trying to tear his arm off. With blood dripping into his eyes, Luca realizes that even a dozen seconds feels like a lifetime. The Paladin's hand glows again, preparing for a point-blank blast. Luca is sent flying backward as the energy explosion rips through his defense. He slams into the ground hard, coughing up blood as his lungs burn. His vision starts to swim, the bright blue light of the enemy's power becoming all he can see. Death is staring him right in the face, and he starts to think there's no way he's making it another 10 seconds. Suddenly, a memory of Himila's Custoria flashes back, the man calling him a pig in a slaughterhouse. Himila's voice screams in his head, telling him that turning his back means a bullet to the brain. The commander's words hit home, reminding him that the Empire has zero use for weaklings. Luca digs his heels in, refusing to die like a piece of meat. He launches a desperate, last-ditch strike before the Paladin can even move. His blade connects with the energy spear in a massive shower of sparks. The impact causes a huge explosion, and someone yells Luca's name through the white noise. The force is too much, and Luca's sword goes spinning away into the trees. He manages to stay on his feet, but his breath is coming in ragged, painful hitches. His cybernetic hand is completely fried, smoking and sparking with dead wires. He forces himself to look up, seeing the Paladin already resetting for the kill. The monster doesn't hesitate, its glowing visor fixed on its target. It lunges forward with a speed that his eyes can barely track, closing the gap in an instant. Luca's heart hammers against his ribs as the 9-second mark passes on a countdown. Suddenly, the Paladin shifts its focus, sending mechanical debris flying as it changes its target. A massive shadow falls over the forest, and a towering figure in pitch-black armor descends from the sky. The red visor of the Black Knight gleams with a cold, predatory light as it enters the fray. Luca screams out for Ailui, horrified to realize the monster had been aiming for his friend all along. The Paladin's white armored boot slams down, closing in on the panicked cadet in the blink of an eye. It lunges forward with a hum of lethal energy, its spear poised for a killing blow. Time seems to slow down as Luca watches in shock, the 11-second mark ticking away. His cybernetic eye glows a frantic red, but even he can't keep up with the creature's speed. The Paladin swings its blade down with a mechanical roar, ready to end the cadet's life. The dying sun paints the forest in shades of orange, a stark contrast to the violence on the ground. Just before the strike lands, a heavy black metal boot crushes the earth between them. Thrusters on the Black Knight's heels erupt in a fountain of sparks and flame. The reinforcement unit doesn't just land, it launches itself into a head-on collision with the enemy. With its red cape billowing behind it, the Black Knight becomes a blur of lethal Imperial steel. The air cracks as the massive warrior breaks the sound barrier to protect its own. It moves with a terrifying agility that belies its bulky, heavy-duty frame. A massive explosion of orange light signals the moment the two titans finally clash. Heel thrusters continue to roar, providing the overwhelming force needed to pin the Paladin down. The Black Knight doesn't give an inch, meeting the monster's strength with absolute authority. The forest clearing is swallowed by the shockwaves of the two mechanical giants fighting for dominance. Sparks cascade like fireworks as their weapons lock, the force of it shaking the very ground. Luca can barely find his voice, shouting out as he watches the tide of the battle turn. With a single, powerful grip, the Black Knight catches the Paladin's energy spear mid-thrust. Drenched in sweat, Luca watches the incredible display of power from the ground. The reinforcement unit delivers a point-blank blast, sending a shockwave through the Paladin's armor. It stands victorious over the crumpled White Knight, its cape tattered from the intensity of the fight. A blinding flash of light marks the end of the struggle as the Paladin's power core is compromised. Mechanical joints hiss and grind as the Black Knight clenches its massive fists. Every plate of its black armor is a testament to the Empire's superior technological might. With the threat neutralized, the towering warrior remains perfectly still, scanning for more hostiles. Steam vents from the armor's cooling systems as it prepares to stand down. Behind them, the ancient monolith pulses with a mysterious, golden glow. The Black Knight turns its head slowly, the red lights of its visor piercing through the smoke. A sudden eruption of energy from the ruins lights up the darkening sky. Lucas stares at the ruins, his mind still reeling from how close they all came to death. He gasps for air, his lungs burning and his face covered in the grime of battle. A heavy silence falls over the clearing as the dust and smoke begin to clear. Through the haze, the silhouette of the Black Knight remains, a silent, terrifying protector. The sheer scale of the Imperial Reinforcement Unit makes everything else in the forest look small. Its red visor glows with a steady, menacing light, confirming the zone is finally secure. Luca finally lets out a ragged scream of relief, collapsing as the weight of survival hits him. The Black Knight stands tall, its massive frame silhouetted against the twilight sky as its tattered red cape billows behind it. It looks down at the defeated Korite paladin, whose once pristine white armor is now cracked and slumped against a wall of debris. The red visor lights of the Imperial unit glow with a cold, unwavering intensity, marking the absolute end of the battle. A spiderweb of cracks spreads across the paladin's blue visor as the energy within it finally flickers and dies out. The massive Imperial Guard known as Legion doesn't hesitate, launching itself straight at the enemy. The Holy Knight of Korite stands its ground, white armor gleaming as it prepares to meet the charge. Legion's boosters kick in, the black metal frame shuddering under the sheer force of its momentum. The machine's movements are calculated and brutal, every joint hissing with steam. It towers over the battlefield, a literal walking tank that makes everything else look small. From the edge of the clearing, Luca watches the two titans square off beneath a massive white monolith. He's just a trainee, but he can feel the air vibrating from the tension. His eyes can barely keep up with the scale of the power on display. The Holy Knight blurs into motion, its energy spear leaving a trail of blue light as it lunges. Legion swings a massive arm to parry, the metal-on-metal screech echoing through the ruins. They collide in a shower of sparks. It's hard to tell who actually has the upper hand here. The White Knight's spear grinds against the black armor of the Imperial unit. Neither side is backing down, their visors locked as they fight for leverage. The sky turns a deep, bruised red as the battle spills out into the frontier. They become nothing but streaks of light, moving faster than any normal human could ever track. Every clash sends out a shockwave that tears into the surrounding trees and earth. An explosion of dust and debris marks another heavy exchange. Small fires start to break out in the tall grass where their energy trails touch the ground. They take the fight into the air, clashing mid-leap with a thunderous crack. The Holy Knight spins, trying to find an opening in that impenetrable black shell. Luca grits his teeth, his face covered in sweat and dirt as he realizes how outclassed he truly is. The Knight's spear glows with concentrated power, aimed straight at the Imperial Guard's core. Legion parries the blow with a heavy-handed swipe, nearly knocking the Knight off balance. The white armor glides back, maintaining distance to avoid the Legion's massive reach. But the Imperial machine doesn't let up, closing the gap in a heartbeat. A massive metal fist slams into the Knight's shoulder, crumpling the reinforced plating. The Knight's defensive field flickers as it absorbs the brunt of the physical impact. Legion follows up by driving the enemy straight into the dirt with a crushing blow. The machine's red visors flare as it looks down at its fallen prey. It reaches out with a gauntlet hand, ready to finish the job. The Holy Knight is tossed aside like a broken doll, tumbling across the rocky ground. The energy spear sinks into the earth right next to Luca, its blue light humming with dangerous power. He can't even move, paralyzed by the sheer proximity of that much energy. Every movement in this fight is happening at speeds he can't even comprehend. He realizes the Legion might not even be able to react if the spear was used correctly. He watches with wide eyes, his own mortality staring him in the face as the battle rages on. The Knight's heavy boot tramples the grass as it tries to regain its footing. The spear continues to pulse, its tip buried deep in the soil. Suddenly, a massive impact craters the ground, throwing up a huge plume of dirt. A beam of energy lances through the dust, cutting a path for the Imperial Guard. Luca prays for anything to end this, his face twisted in desperation. The Knight's strike misses by a hair as the Legion machine pivots out of the way. A blast of blue light catches the Legion's head, shattering part of the helmet's casing. In a chaos, a hand reaches out and grips a weapon tight. This isn't over yet. The Imperial Guard towers over the fallen Knight, its power overwhelming and absolute. Legion's mechanical hand reaches down, closing around the knight's throat in a final, crushing grip. The knight struggles, but against a machine like this, raw human strength just isn't enough. Energy surges through the Legion's arm as it prepares to deliver the killing blow. A final explosion of light erupts as the Knight of Korite is completely neutralized. Dust and energy smoke rise from the site of the clash, a silent testament to the machine's efficiency. Luca collapses to the ground, his body finally giving out after the intense strain of the battle. He gasps for air, his vision blurring as the adrenaline begins to fade. Fear grips him as he realizes he has no way to defend himself if the knight is still standing. Heavy footsteps approach, vibrating through the earth. Someone is walking toward him. He lies there, pleading for mercy as the massive shadow of the Imperial Guard falls over him. The machine's voice is cold and monotone as it acknowledges his survival. "Good work, trainee." Luca looks up, still struggling to catch his breath. The sheer size of the Legion armor is terrifying this close-up. The machine reaches out toward him, and for a second, Luca thinks it's over. But then he sees it. Through the cracks in the damaged helmet, there's nothing but cold, complex machinery. No eyes, no face, no human. The horrifying truth sinks in. The heroes of the Empire are just mindless, programmed shells. By removing every human part, they've created the perfect, heartless weapon. He stares into the void where a human soul should be, his reflection caught in the metal. The Legion unit looms above him, its red visors glowing like dying embers in the sunset. Luca's voice trembles as he realizes the thing in front of him is alive, yet completely hollow. It doesn't even have a brain. He's stuck between terror and existential dread. "Are you a machine?" he whispers. "Or are you human?" The question hangs in the air, unanswered by the silent giant standing over him. Everything he believed about the Imperial Guard is gone, replaced by this chilling mechanical reality. The machinery whirs as the Legion unit stabilizes itself, its massive frame clicking and locking into place. It kneels down, the heavy metal plates grinding together with a sound that makes Luca's skin crawl. Luca curses under his breath, the weight of the situation finally crashing down on him. He looks at the machine and wonders if this is the ultimate goal, to become a shell in service of the Empire. His body won't stop shaking, a reaction to the trauma and a freezing realization of what he's witnessing. He lies broken in the dirt, the mechanical god kneeling beside him in a mockery of a rescue. Suddenly, a more human voice cuts through the silence. "Are you still alive?" Iloe Karthika emerges from the wreckage, looking remarkably composed despite the absolute carnage around them. "Not in the best condition, but you survived." Luca looks at the fallen knight's armor, realization dawning that everyone else is gone. Luca coughs, his voice weak, as he tells Iloe that he doesn't think he's going to make it much longer. Iloe looks at him, his usual smug expression replaced by something a bit more solemn. He sits down near Luca, looking out at the ruined frontier as if he's contemplating his own path. The twin white monoliths stand like silent sentinels over the field of corpses as the sun begins to set. "Yeah," Iloe whispers. Luca tells Iloe to run, to leave him and seek out the dreams he talked about before the transport arrives. "I'm a lost cause, so just go." Iloe remains silent, his head bowed as he listens to the dying trainee's plea. He looks down at his own mechanical arm, perhaps seeing the same cage that Luca saw in the Legion unit. The light of the setting sun catches the gold and white of his cybernetics, a stark contrast to the dark soil. Luca watches him, hoping that at least one of them can escape this machine-driven nightmare. Iloe scoffs, the irony of his noble background and guaranteed future not lost on him. He has everything, yet he feels as trapped as the boy dying beside him. Luca admits he can't understand Iloe, or why he would stay in a place that has no room for human souls. "I can't understand you, Iloe." Luca looks back at Iloe, his expression one of confusion as the other boy stays by his side. Iloe's eyes soften, a genuine smile crossing his face. "When you're talking about your dreams," he says, "it was the brightest I'd ever seen you shine." Luca lies on the cold ground, his strength fading as the words sink in. Iloe reaches out, his intricate cybernetic hand gripping Luca's with a firm, grounding pressure. Luca can only stare up at him, breathless and unable to find the words to respond. Iloe leans over him, his face drenched in sweat, looking more determined than Luca has ever seen him. "There's no way I'll be able to live on guilt-free if you die like this," Iloe admits, his voice straining with emotion. As a ship flies off into the distance, leaving them behind in the glow of the sunset, Luca thinks to himself, "What an idiot." Luca is sitting back, flipping through a magazine called Starship Trespassing. He's just chilling in the cadet lounge, trying to kill some time. He's pretty focused on his reading until a voice breaks the silence. It's Ailey, leaning in with that same smug smirk he always has. Luca just flips the page, not really in the mood to deal with him. He tells Ailey to stop appearing out of nowhere like some kind of ghost. The lounge is busy with other cadets and staff going about their business. The talk turns to their fallen comrades, like Claude and the unit they lost at the frontier. Luca stays seated, keeping his distance from whatever Ailey is planning next. Ailey brings up the artifact they recovered, that weird floating cube from the Corn Paladin incident. He wonders who's actually going to end up collecting it. Apparently, the Empire is putting together a specialized retrieval team just for the job. The conversation moves to the bigger political picture and the different forces clashing for power. Luca shuts it down, saying he doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to take orders and fight. To him, that's all an Imperial Guard member is supposed to do. But in his head, he's still seeing that hollow Legion machine from the battlefield. He remembers Hamilla's explaining that those things are just empty shells. The official story was that it was just a phantom signal from a dead pilot. But Luca knows what he saw. That thing definitely reacted to him even after the pilot was gone. He stares off into space, clearly unsettled by the memory. He sets the magazine aside and moves on. He finds himself in a room where the walls are covered in holograms of a peaceful garden. It's the visiting room, the one place where cadets can actually see people from the outside world. Luca's been called in for a meeting, but he's already looking pretty tense. Waiting for him at one of the tables is a woman he's never met. This is Lillian Ramones, the silver-haired sister of the late cadet Claude. Just seeing her brings back the sound of the explosions and the carnage from the front. She watches him closely, her expression hard to read. They sit down for tea, but the atmosphere is anything but friendly. Lillian gets straight to the point. She's here specifically to see him. She tells him that Claude always talked about how talented he was compared to the others. Luca stays quiet, but a drop of sweat shows how much pressure he's feeling. She suggests that they should start getting to know each other a lot better. Luca doesn't waste any time. He just looks her in the eye and asks, "Why me?" Lillian explains that marrying into her family is an offer most people would kill for. She looks at him, expecting him to jump at the chance for nobility. But that's the last thing on Luca's mind. Instead of feeling lucky, he just feels more reluctant to get dragged into her world. She's stunned when he gives her a flat no. He just says goodbye and gets ready to walk out. He turns his back on her and heads straight for the door. Lillian is left behind in the quiet room, watching him leave her in the dust. A hand suddenly reaches out and grabs Luca's metal wrist, stopping him in his tracks. It's Lillian. She's not about to let him walk away that easily. She admits she might have been rushing things a bit too much with him. She's blushing, practically begging him to just start out as friends instead. Luca just looks at her, clearly exhausted by the whole interaction. She eventually says her goodbyes and starts to head out. Luca stands there for a second, looking down at his hand and processing what just happened. He watches as she runs off down the bright hallway, disappearing from sight. Later on, he heads to a massive training hall filled with sparring platforms. He's there to meet Instructor Kinyuan, the man he hopes can help him get stronger. Kinyuan looks him over with that same tired, experienced gaze. Luca asks to be trained, but Kinyuan points out that he's already plenty skilled for his level. But Luca isn't looking for a basic lesson. He needs something far more advanced. Kinyuan just watches him, weighing the request before agreeing to spar. To the cadets, Kinyuan is a legend, strong, but without the massive ego of the other instructors. Luca looks at his new cybernetic arm, knowing he needs to master it properly. He settles into a combat stance, ready to show the instructor what he's capable of. Kinyuan takes a breath, settling into his own relaxed fighting posture. Luca lunges forward first, leading with a heavy strike. Kinyuan parries it effortlessly, asking if he's just trying to test out his new augment. Luca knows the man is a veteran, so a basic lunge isn't going to make him flinch. He unleashes a series of rapid-fire blows, lighting up the area with the impact. He focuses on closing the distance, looking for any opening he can exploit. He puts everything into a massive strike with his metal hand. Kinyuan's eyes sharpen as he easily tracks the incoming attack. He meets the blow with his own hand, completely negating the force behind it. For a split second, Luca thinks he's actually found a way through the man's guard. He's sure he's won, but Kinyuan doesn't look worried at all. The instructor's gaze remains steady and clinical. Suddenly, Luca's focus narrows as his eye begins to glow with power. Before he can even react, he's sent flying straight up into the air. He's completely caught off guard by the sudden shift in momentum. He has no idea how he even ended up off the ground like this. He tries to recover his footing as he's tossed across the training mat. He's not about to quit after just one hit, though. He pushes off and charges back in with even more intensity than before. Kinyuan just stands his ground, waiting for the boy's next move. Luca is deflected again, hitting what feels like an invisible wall. He gets thrown back and bounces hard off the floor like a skipped stone. Luca is flat on his back, sweat pouring down his face as he stares blankly at the ceiling. His legs are kicking in the air, but he's clearly not in control of where they go. Turns out, Kinyuan is just holding him upside down by the ankle like it's a morning stretch. The instructor asks him what the big rush is. He makes the whole thing look way too easy. Luca's eyes go wide as he tries to process exactly how he got countered so fast. In his mind, that punch should have landed perfectly right on Kinyuan's chin. But reality was a different story. The moment Kinyuan touched his arm, his entire stance collapsed. Kinyuan just redirected that force, sending him spinning through the air like a ragdoll. Luca slumps on the floor, gasping for breath as his body recovers from the impact. The instructor just stands over him with a slight, knowing smirk. Determined, Luca forces himself back into a fighting stance, his eyes locked on his target. Kinyuan looks at his own cybernetic hand and asks if he's still interested after seeing the state he's in. A single drop of blood splatters on the floor, a clear sign that this power isn't free. The training room falls silent as the two of them take a breather in the middle of the hall. Kinyuan asks him what he actually learned from that exchange. Luca says it felt like he was under a spell. The technique is called Archi's Victima, more commonly known as the Archi's combat method. Luca's heard of it before, but mostly as some low-life street fighting style. Kinyuan asks if he thinks it's just hard to learn. Luca brings up the brain issues Kinyuan mentioned, guessing it's one of the nasty side effects. He doesn't care about the danger. If it gets him more power, he's more than willing to take the risk. Kinyuan crouches down, reminding him that he's already considered a valuable asset. He demands a real answer, wanting to know if Luca is truly ready to commit. Luca's gaze is unwavering, sharp and full of resolve. Kinyuan stands up and turns his back, satisfied with the silence. A grin slowly spreads across the instructor's face as he turns back. He claps a hand on Luca's shoulder, officially taking him under his wing. Training starts back up immediately, and it's even more grueling than the first round. Luca spent the next few weeks getting flipped and tossed across the gym floor. Kinyuan watches the kid carefully, noticing how he manages to recover faster each time. Luca wipes the sweat from his face, a crazed grin forming as he starts to feel the results. The instructor can see the potential starting to take shape. 1 month later, Ali Karthika looks a bit worn out, sweat beading on his forehead. Luca doesn't look much better, with deep shadows under his eyes and a weary expression. As they walk down the corridor, Luca brushes off his exhaustion as just being busy lately. Kinyuan didn't really teach him anything directly. He just told Luca to watch and learn on his own. The Archi's method was a total departure from standard training. Most styles focus on one specific skill. But this was a superior combat algorithm, designed to make the most out of every move he already knew. It's a way of optimizing the mind to calculate the most efficient killing blow in a matter of seconds. Luca breaks the silence and asks Ailey how his mission went. Ailey calls it boring, just cleaning up a broken android. Ailey complains that every assignment lately has been child's play. He notes that the enemy must be being careful. Luca listens as Ailey mentions that even the chief centurion has been missing from the scene. Luca's expression tightens as the conversation turns to more serious matters. Ailey drops a bombshell. He's heard that a group of people is plotting an actual rebellion against the Empire. Luca stands there for a moment, letting the news of a rebellion sink in. It's a heavy weight to drop on anyone. He looks down, his expression hardening as he processes the threat to the status quo. The intensity in his eyes is sharp enough to cut, showing just where his loyalties lie. Without warning, he pins Ailey against the wall with his mechanical hand, not holding back an ounce of pressure. Luca warns him that while he might overlook someone wanting to leave, he will never tolerate an enemy of the Empire. Ailey looks terrified, struggling to breathe as he tries to explain that he only thought the information would be useful. Luca leans in close, making sure the warning is etched into Ailey's mind before letting him go. He starts walking away, telling Ailey to watch his mouth so he doesn't end up on a rebel hit list himself. He gives one last cold, dismissive look over his shoulder. He's clearly done with this conversation. Luca tells him to stop talking altogether, calling him nothing more than an irritation at this point. Ailey is left standing in the empty corridor, asking if Luca is really just going to walk away like that. The scene shifts to the tiered levels of the city as they go their separate ways for the time being. Later, Luca and Kinyuan are moving through the grimy, smoke-filled streets of the slums. Kinyuan notes it's been a while since they've been home. Kinyuan gives a small, knowing smile, reminding Luca that they both clawed their way out of this gutter. They walk right past a street brawl without even a second glance. This kind of violence is just white noise here. Luca looks out over the sprawl. This is the lower sector, where all the unfiltered waste and heat from the upper levels gets dumped. The air is thick and heavy, a constant reminder of the life he worked so hard to put behind him. Kinyuan signals for him to stay close as they head deeper into the labyrinth of back alleys. They arrive at a building bathed in a red neon glow, where a rowdy crowd is gathered near the entrance. Luca asks if this is the black market. Kinyuan just chuckles and asks if it's his first time seeing the real world. Luca is surprised that an Imperial veteran knows the layout of the slums even better than he does. He looks at his hand, remembering Kinyuan's order to use low-energy output gear for this trip. He wonders what the plan is. Kinyuan tells him to get ready as they approach the guarded entrance. He doesn't offer any more details. Their boots click against the metal floor as they walk up to the guarded threshold. A stocky black market guard blocks their path, telling them they're headed for the wrong door. Kinyuan asks to speak with the manager. Kinyuan mentions Aleph, the man in charge, which only seems to irritate the guard further. The guard pulls a massive gun and points it right at Kinyuan's face, shouting at him for the disrespect. Kinyuan doesn't even blink. He just gives a cold, dangerous smile, as if he was expecting exactly this. In a blur of motion, Luca and Kinyuan move in perfect sync, closing the gap before the guy can even think about firing. The guard is completely blindsided, his sunglasses slipping as he realizes he's in over his head. Luca knocks the barrel aside as the guy tries to struggle, but it's already over. He slams the guard to the ground and points the guy's own weapon at his head, telling him not to move a muscle. The other guards can only watch in shock as Kinyuan stands there unbothered, wiped of his smile. 2 handguns clatter onto the floor, the threat completely neutralized in a matter of seconds. Kinyuan looks back at the entrance, asking Luca what he would have done if they hadn't been fast enough. Luca says he'd have found another way. They step back outside and look over a massive, glowing industrial facility nested deep in the sector. Kinyuan explains that they're looking at the hottest place in a whole empire. He has a look of grim satisfaction on his face as they prepare for whatever comes next. Luca and Kinyuan head up to the office to meet the man in charge. Inside, Aleph is waiting with a few guards for backup. This guy runs the local black market, and he isn't known for being friendly. Kinyuan cuts straight to the chase and offers up Luca for a match. Luca doesn't look too happy about being used as a bargaining chip. Aleph doesn't even acknowledge him, just focuses on his cigar. He dismissively flicks the cigar onto the desk. The negotiation turns violent in a split second. The guards waste no time drawing their weapons on the intruders. Aleph makes it clear that they aren't leaving without a fight. Luca's irregular eye begins to glow a piercing blue. Every weapon in the room is instantly logged into his system. The entire office transforms into a grid of tactical data. He identifies the weak points in their formation. Luca lunges across the desk before anyone can pull trigger. Aleph and his men are caught completely off guard by his speed. The boy moves through the room like a ghost in a machine. The guards try to aim, but he's already slipped past their line of sight. He disarms one of them and takes control of the situation. Now the tables have turned, and Luca is the one holding the gun. He fires off a series of precise shots to clear the path. The guards are left stumbling out of the room. Back in the office, Kinyuan asks what happened to the previous boss. Aleph explains the guy met a messy end for trying to rig his matches. Kinyuan isn't intimidated by the story at all. Aleph loses his cool and aims a built-in gun right at Kinyuan's head. Kinyuan just tells him to take a deep breath and calm down. He brings up a man named Tora, and Aleph's expression shifts instantly. That name clearly holds enough weight to stop him in his tracks. Aleph begrudgingly signals for his remaining men to stand down. He tries to act composed, but the sweat on his face tells a different story. He looks at Luca, convinced the kid is just organic fodder for the arena. Kinyuan UPS the ante by offering the location of Tora's hidden safe. Now Aleph is actually willing to listen to the deal. Kinyuan gives him a knowing smirk as the terms are set. Luca watches them, realizing he has a long way to go to reach Kinyuan's level. He understands now that he's missing the tactical depth his mentor possesses. Soon after, they arrive at the Colosseum's waiting room. Security cameras watch their every move from the ceiling. Kinyuan brings up a holographic display of Luca's upcoming opponent. Luca stares at the image, sizing up the massive combatant. His opponent is Gabriel, a powerhouse known as the Steel Fist. Back in the locker room, Luca is reviewing the digital data on his opponent. Kinyuan points out that the guy is basically a walking scrap heap with all those cheat mods. Luca clenches his mechanical fist, feeling the weight of the upcoming fight. He's focused, but the pressure is clearly starting to get to him. Kinyuan reminds him of the time he deflected a bullet without any tech help, proving he has raw talent. He's glad the kid came to him for training instead of some back alley monitor. Kinyuan gives him a reassuring smirk, confident in his student's abilities. Luca just gives a small, determined smile in return. The lights in the arena tunnel flicker to life. An elevator platform begins to rise, taking Luca toward the deafening roar of the crowd. The fans are already jeering, looking for a bloody show. Luca steps out, pulling his hood low as he ignores the insults. The crowd is full of lowlives and degenerates, just waiting for slaughter. They're practically drooling at the thought of the smaller kid getting crushed. Luca stands on the glowing octagonal platform, facing his massive opponent. His boots click against the cold metal floor as he finds his footing. He looks out over the arena, the spotlight catching the edge of his hood. The sight of the crowd brings back memories of where he started. Flashback to a younger Luca, holding a meager food tray in a dark, dingy room. Even as a kid, his gaze was sharp and unforgiving. He was just one of many orphans in the slum training camps, all fighting for survival. While the others played, he spent his time reading dusty old books on strategy and combat. He'd even use heavy rocks as weights since there was no gym equipment. The other kids mocked him for wasting his energy and making himself hungrier. But Luca didn't care about their opinions. He knew that extra food was the only prize worth having in that hellhole. He quickly learned that in the slums, you either dominate or you get stepped on. The arena is a place of nightmares, filled with the sounds of kids crying in the dark. Luca spent his early days there, training his body while barely having enough food to survive. He learned to chew through the pain and the hunger. As he grew into the Empire's training program, he became something else entirely. The other trainees could only watch in silence as the irregular outpaced them all. Now he's back in the pits, riding a transport toward a fight he never expected to have again. He thought he'd left the slums behind, but the underworld has a way of dragging you back. Lucas steps out into the light of the Colosseum. Standing across from him is Gabriel, a mountain of meat and machine. The giant known as the Steel Fist doesn't care about anything but the paycheck. Lucas stares up at the behemoth, his gaze remaining ice-cold. Gabriel's massive mods are so crude, they cause constant inflammation in his own flesh. The giant leans down, demanding to know what the kid is looking at. Luca just stands his ground, looking like a toy compared to those massive mechanical arms. Instead of backing down, the young soldier just lets out a smirk. Gabriel's eyes go wide at the sheer audacity. The giant's expression turns to pure, unadulterated rage. He vows to beat the boy into the dirt until he's begging to be a slave. Up in the booths, the announcer whips the crowd into a frenzy. While the gamblers scream for blood, Kinyuan watches from the stands with a bored expression. The bell rings, and the match officially begins. Luca clenches his fists, ready for the impact. Gabriel leads with a massive overhead swing. The fist slams down, shattering the concrete floor like it was glass. Luca is already gone, moving as a blur of speed. He weaves through the debris, staying just inches away from the crushing weight of those arms. Gabriel can't believe he's missing a target this small. Luca stays focused, waiting for the right moment. The giant swings again, but Luca leaps into the air with impossible agility. He lands gracefully, keeping his eyes locked on the behemoth. Gabriel unleashes a barrage of heavy strikes that shake the entire arena. The crowd starts getting toxic, screaming for Luca to just die so they can see the next match. Luca wipes away the sweat, his mind flashing back to his training. He remembers Kinyuan explaining the core principle of Arki's combat. It's about being satisfied with what you already have. Praying for help won't make a weapon drop from the sky when you need it. Kinyuan took away his freedom, but he left him his eyes. He doesn't need to be stronger than Gabriel to win. The secret to Arki's is utilizing every bit of your potential to the absolute limit. Luca's irregular eye begins to glow with an intense, blue light. The world transforms into data. Gabriel's shoulders become a trigger, his gaze the barrel. Luca sees every punch coming before it even starts, turning the giant into nothing more than a predictable target. Kinyuan watches the chaos from the stands, blending into the crowd of gamblers and thugs. He gives a small, knowing smile as if he's already seen the ending of this fight. Luca's mind drifts back to the battlefield, a landscape of dead soldiers and smoking ruins. He remembers the first time that blue light flickered in his eyes, turning him into a weapon. Back in the arena, Gabriel swings with enough force to kill a man 10 times over. The crowd is getting restless, screaming at the giant to stop playing around and finish it. Luca's neural pathways ignite, his brain processing every movement as raw data. He launches into the air, spinning over the giant's massive frame while Kinyuan observes. As he passes, he brushes his hand against Gabriel's arm, feeling the heat of the machinery. He maneuvers through the blind spots of the cyborg's bulky frame. Gabriel can't even track where the boy went, his eyes darting around in confusion. Luca lands a sharp strike and dances away before the giant can even register the hit. He's actually enjoying this, a wild, predatory grin spreading across his face. The steel fist is forced to a knee, staring up at the kid he thought he could crush. Gabriel's mechanical arm starts to hiss as the pressure builds inside the pistons. He unleashes an explosion of force, swinging with everything he has left. The impact sends out a blinding flash of sparks and white light. Luca mocks him with a smirk, standing tall despite the chaos around him. The giant's fist craters the floor, missing the target once again. Luca slides right underneath Gabriel's guard, moving like a ghost through the smoke. He plants his boot and launches himself into one final aerial maneuver. He somersaults over the giant's head, completely humiliating the veteran fighter. Gabriel's face is a mask of pure shock and disbelief. He looks dazed, his systems failing to keep up with the boy's speed. He lets out a roar of rage, but it's clear he's already lost the fight. Luca lands perfectly, blood dripping from his eye as he looks back with cold confidence. The stadium goes dead silent as the crowd realizes that nobody just outclassed their champion. Luca gives them a triumphant smirk, letting everyone know that their bets were all for nothing. Luca walks away from the arena, leaving a broken Gabriel face down in the dirt. He pauses to check his cybernetic eye, making sure everything is still calibrated. The spectators watch in total silence as the kid, who just took down a giant, vanishes from sight. He heads into the back halls of the facility, the silence a sharp contrast to the cheering outside. Luca keeps a neutral face, but he's clearly thinking about what his victory just cost him. Kinyuan is already there waiting with a smirk, calling him a good boy for pulling off the win. He tells Luca that his real training, the Archie's Victima, is just beginning. They walk past racks of heavy, cybernetic limbs, the tools of their trade. Kinyuan pulls out a glowing device, explaining that kindness can be a lethal investment. He watches Luca closely, seeing how much of the lesson is actually sinking in. Luca looks at his own hand, starting to understand the kind of power he's holding. Kinyuan's tone shifts, reminding him that in this world, nothing is ever free. The mentor walks off into the dark, leaving Luca with a new set of instructions. Luca realizes he might have underestimated just how calculating Kinyuan really is. He knows this investment is going to come with a massive bill later on. Kinyuan walks away, his shadow looming large in the glowing corridor. Over in the med bay, doctors are busy going over some high-tech spinal scans. Gabriel is laid out on a table, looking more like a scrap heap than a warrior. The big guy wakes up in a panic, his face looking like a car crash of meat and metal. The doctor and nurse don't have good news, standing over him with grim expressions. Since he's broke, the doctor says they'll have to scrap his current limbs for budget models. Gabriel starts losing it, insisting he needs combat-grade parts to get his revenge. Right then, Luca strolls into the room like he owns the place. Gabriel's eye practically bulges out of his head when he sees who it is. He starts screaming about how he's going to kill Luca the second he gets off that table. Luca doesn't flinch, just staring him down with those cold, clinical eyes. He thinks back to Kinyuan's advice about always making sure the environment favors you. He just stands there, letting the giant tire himself out with all the shouting. Then, Luca pulls out a device loaded with credit chips and passes it to the doctor. Gabriel stops mid-sentence, his jaw practically hitting the floor. Luca tells the doctor to ignore the budget and give Gabriel the high-end stuff. He confirms the payment, effectively buying the life of the man who wants to kill him. As he turns to leave, Gabriel finally manages to ask what the kid's real name is. The massive cyborg just stares, his brain failing to process why his enemy just saved him. Luca gives him his name and doesn't even look back as he leaves the room. We jump ahead to the physical training grounds, where the Empire's elite are busy beating each other up. A massive shockwave kicks up dust during a high-speed spar on one of the platforms. Ali Karthika comes in hot with a high kick, putting all his weight into the strike. But Luca is already there, catching the blow with a block that sends sparks flying. His cybernetic arm doesn't even budge, locking Ali's leg in place. Ali looks completely caught off guard, his eyes going wide as he loses his momentum. Luca doesn't hesitate, immediately moving in to finish the spar before Ali can recover. A sharp impact sends a shockwave through the training ring, ending the spar in an instant. Ali Karthika winces and clutches his silver, cybernetic arm, trying to catch his breath after the blow. They take a breather on the edge of the platform, and Ali asks if Luca learned that thug-like, Arki's combat style from Kinyuan. Luca's mind flashes back to the arena. That style wasn't just about winning, it was about cold-blooded efficiency. He stays quiet, the intensity of his focus still lingering even after the training session. Ailey watches him closely, sweating and clearly unsettled by how much his friend has changed. They finally stand up to leave, the silence between them growing heavier. The scene shifts to the trainee barracks mess hall, where the midday crowd is starting to filter in. Luca looks bored, his mind already moving on to the next task on his schedule. Ailey looks like he's dreading what's about to happen, unable to meet Luca's gaze. It turns out he set up a meeting with Lillian Ramones, who is already waiting at their table with a regal air. The air turns ice cold the moment they sit down, with Ailey immediately apologizing for the ambush. Lillian doesn't waste any time, demanding to know why Luca has been avoiding her. Luca gives her absolutely nothing, closing his eyes as if he's trying to ignore her existence. Ailey tries to play peacemaker, asking Luca if he could at least try to be a bit more polite. Lillian's crimson eyes narrow, searching for any sign of a reaction from the boy. She asks him point-blank what he finds so offensive about her that he won't even look her way. Luca just stares at her, his expression as cold and clinical as a machine. He looks right through her, unmoved by her status or her beauty. He knows exactly how nobles like her operate. To them, commoners are just pawns to be manipulated. Ailey is sweating bullets, the pressure of the silence between them becoming unbearable. Lillian waits for a response, her superior smirk barely masking her growing frustration. Luca finishes his coffee in total silence, completely ignoring the two people sitting across from him. He puts his cup down and tells her bluntly never to visit him again before standing up to leave. He walks out without a second look, leaving a stunned silence at the table. Luca heads down the corridor, his mind already closing the door on the entire interaction. Ailey rushes to catch up, lecturing him on why he didn't need to be so incredibly harsh. Luca stops him cold, explaining that any kindness would just be an invitation for Lillian to cling on and scheme. You know, she's just looking for a new tool to use in her family's power games. Ailey is shocked that Luca saw through her so quickly, his own feelings making him defensive. Luca tells him he didn't even need to think about it. He could read Ailey's panic in every breath. His cybernetic eye flares as he makes it clear that he has zero interest in her or her noble world. Ailey is left speechless, feeling like his entire soul was just scanned and found lacking. He freezes by the doorway, the realization of what Luca is becoming finally starting to sink in. He stands alone, unable to shake the feeling of being completely transparent under that gaze. The empty cups on the table are the only evidence of the conversation that just shattered their dynamic.